it's an honor to be here. We've heard a lot of great ideas and stories and perspectives today about the ecology of the city. And the idea I want to share starts with a question. When we have a great idea, how are we going to make it happen? Do we just bring together the people who need to be involved, the employees, stakeholders, funders, maybe neighbors, and say, come on everybody, great idea, let's do it? You know, does telling people to do it work? You know what happens, right? One group wants one thing, another group wants another. There may be some resistance, some tension, maybe even some argument about what idea is best, right? And it gets complicated. So how do we induce others to act together? The truth is, we cannot make people cooperate, right? They have to feel motivated. They have to feel compelled and engaged, inspired. So the how is really about engagement. And if we're going to engage people, we need to consider these questions. Who needs to be involved? Who else shares the challenge or will be impacted by the idea? What matters to them? What do they care about? What's in it for them? And when we need diverse groups, how do we include diverse perspectives? You know, what collective themes may unite them? Much of what we know about what motivates diverse groups to cooperate and act together comes from our understanding of the human brain. As mammals, we are capable of bonding and cooperating for purposes of survival. But this is not a rational experience. As Simon Sinek kind of alluded to, it's a felt one. It happens as a result of the shared emotions we experience in response to a mutual concern or issue. That's how we're hardwired. So one of the best ways I know of creating the shared experience is through meaningful conversation. And this happens organically all the time. We have great conversation with somebody and really connect. And we can intentionally invite others into meaningful conversation with a really good process. One such process is called the World Cafe. I'm going to tell you a little bit about it, and then I'm going to share some stories of how communities have used it. So the World Cafe is an open source process. It's pioneered by David Isaacs and Juanita Brown, who have done a lot to make it accessible. It's being used around the world today in many different cultures and many different kinds of organizations, and it can be adapted to different size groups, from 20 to 2,000 or more. We actually really have not tested the limits. Fundamental to the World Cafe is its focus on inquiry versus advocacy. And this is important. The process by design steers us as participants away from just advocating for my idea, which is a more competitive mindset, and moves us more towards inquiring what others may be thinking and looking for connections and coming up with discovering, our idea, which is a more cooperative mindset. And this is very different from some of the more traditional meeting structures that we see out there, whether it's public meetings or even meetings in corporate boardrooms where there's a lot of advocating. I'm coming in with my idea, I'm going to defend my idea, I'm going to sell my idea. So as a result, the process is very inclusive and versatile, and it can be used for a variety of purposes. So developing a shared vision, or reflecting on a shared experience, or catalyzing creativity and innovation. What can we do together? The end result is the collective or the collaborative learning and discovery by the people in the room about the purpose at hand. So conversations happen in small groups around questions designed to promote inquiry about the purpose. People move to other tables, they share what they're hearing, they look for connections, they look for themes, and they report out. And that report out is something we call a harvest. The harvest is the collective learning in the room. And it's really great when we can make that harvest visible. There's lots of ways to do it, but one way which you're going to see a lot of examples of in these stories that I'm going to tell you is something called a graphic recording or a visual recording, which is where what people say and what they're learning gets captured on a big image that's full of words and pictures and color, which helps us remember and see what we're learning together. This is where we start. It may not be where we end, but it's a great way to build engagement. So a couple of quick stories. The first one is about the city of Somerville. A big transportation project there. The Green Line is being extended through the center of the city, and they decided they needed a comprehensive plan to account for all the changes. So typically, planning departments do this, as many of you know, by hosting a public meeting where experts present and the public gets a chance to comment and ask questions. So you hear from, some special interest groups who come to advocate for their point of view, the open space group or the bike group or the car group or the My Neighborhood group. The problem is the loudest voices tend to get the most attention. And this can really minimize participation by others. And then down the road, the plans may hit some resistance or some political roadblocks or 11th hour interventions. It can really feel like an uphill battle. So the city decided they wanted to know what could the public get behind. And they hosted a series of public conversations aimed at understanding what do people value most in this community and what do they want to go forward with? What do they want to bring with them? They were able to attract a really nice cross-section of folks from different communities in the city, neighborhoods, backgrounds, cultures, professions, generations. And what they learned was there was remarkable consistency and consensus. And this was seen not only by the city, but by the people who participated as well. So the end result was the plan flew through the political approval process in 2012 with very little resistance. So it was a true community plan with the wind at its back. The next story is about the town of Reading, where I live. And we used the World Cafe a couple of years ago in response to public outcry over 2 drug-related murders of young men who were former Reading High School graduates. The community was shocked and angry and wanted accountability, and they were demanding enforcement and crackdown on teens in schools. So rather than get into a debate about solutions, town leaders decided to host a public conversation to talk about the problem of teen substance abuse. What are its impacts on us as a community? and what are some of the root causes? And here's a really good example of one of these graphic recordings that I mentioned, where what came out of those conversations was captured by a graphic recorder on this big visual that everyone could see together. So what became clear was that it was a very complicated problem, right? And that we as adults, we all play a role. And there are no simple solutions. And the conversation led the way for more meaningful dialogue about the behavioral health of Reading teens, and it resulted in a behavioral health policy that takes a much more systemic approach to the problem. Not perfect, but is going in that direction. So my last story is about the Occupy Boston movement. They hosted a summit in the fall of 2011. This is a great example of how the World Cafe process can really hold diverse perspectives. The diversity in the room was amazing. There were Occupy organizers and campers, Tea Partyists, anarchists, social justice activists, Chinese residents who spoke no English, and just plain curious people who wanted to check it out. It was kind of a volatile mix, and there were moments of discontent and anger and even disruption. And there were several times where I was a little concerned things were going to blow up, but they didn't. The process was the glue. People talked to each other. They learned that there were themes about what they cared about and what was needed for the movement. And what became really clear was for the movement to grow or to be more successful, they really needed to become more inclusive and they needed more solidarity, as well as more structure and purpose, which hadn't yet been developed. So the truth is, the challenges we face and the solutions we are going to need for those challenges are complex. And I believe that, while a good idea may start here in our heads, it really has to meet the needs of a broader, more diverse whole in order to be successful. I also believe that as leaders and as folks with the ideas, we need to go beyond just having a great idea towards hosting the kinds of conversations that really bring about our idea. For this is what inspires collaborative action. The World Cafe is one process that can help. Thank you very much.